Welcome to another day in the Matrix and happy eclipse season. We're pretty much here. The total lunar eclipse will be between next Thursday and Friday, March 13th and 14th, as many of you are well aware. A very powerful total lunar eclipse that has been known to shake up markets. But like we covered last week when we had this similar lunar eclipse back in late May of 2021, the crypto market corrected heavily into that eclipse, and then once we passed through the actual eclipse date, the market held up and traded sideways without a significantly deeper correction from that point forward. Instead, from that lunar eclipse, we actually built a basing structure that took only a couple months before a final bear trap into the July full moon, followed by a recovery phase. So we're going to focus on this setup today since we've moved into eclipse season, and our next red pill will be after our upcoming lunar eclipse, where we'll of course be following up and recapping how this all played out. But for now, before we get into today's red pill, make sure to get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's a little bit earlier in the day, or a glass of wine or beer, or any beverage of your choice if it's getting a little later out there in the Matrix. And also make sure to comment below this post here on Patreon to vote on the altcoins you'd like me to cover in next week's Red Pill podcast. But before you leave a comment, please just make sure that you used the search function here on Patreon to check that I have not covered the project in at least 3 months. So if it's been over 3 months since I've reviewed that altcoin, or if I've happened to never have covered that altcoin before, as long as it has at least 1 year of chart history, you can go ahead and comment below with the name of the altcoin and include the ticker symbol as well. And whatever submissions get the most likes, those top 4 will be selected for next week's Red Pill. Now let's get into this, but quickly, just an update on Pi Network. Perhaps some of you have invested in my crypto mastermind in the past, and very grateful for your support if you have. And perhaps there you heard about Pi Network, and perhaps you followed what I shared in that intro course lesson and downloaded the app and then started mining free Pi Network tokens. Well, now this project actually has an official price. It's effectively spent the last 2 weeks trading around $1.60. Now, I know some people that got my crypto mastermind course maybe 3 or 4 years ago and have over 1,000 Pi tokens, which are now worth over $1,500. So I'm just going to quickly pull up the Pi chart. You can see right here, definitely some turbulence overall, but we have a brand new chart here. I'm not going to be doing any TA on this one, but just wanted to share that it has effectively started trading, and I know a lot of people in the community that have gotten between 500 to maybe 1,000 tokens over all those years, and this turned out to be a pretty lucrative exercise of patience. And considering everyone here could have gotten my crypto mastermind for just a little over $150 after your Patreon member discount, then that means you'd only have to have needed to mine 100 tokens to have covered the full cost of your investment in my art. So pretty incredible how this launched and actually went to a specific price. I was expecting it to be like fractions of a penny, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, the main reason for mentioning this today is because I got a notification from Pi Network app that states you'll need to complete your mainnet checklist within the next 4 to 5 days in order to keep these Pi tokens that you've mined, which obviously, if you intend to sell these tokens for real money, well, it's worth opening up your Pi Network app now and taking a moment to complete this checklist if you'd like to. This way you can migrate your balance over to their mainnet. And for full transparency, this process does require KYC. So just keep that in mind. And of course, I'm not suggesting you to do this, but if you want to keep those Pi tokens that you've mined, then consider doing this process within your Pi Network phone app within the next 4 to 5 days. It's pretty wild to talk about this because it's something that I shared in that course over 4 years ago. And you know, some of you heard in my last Red Pill that we're officially at the 4-year mark of Waters Above. I think technically the beginning of April would have been when I launched the mastermind community here on Patreon. So maybe we'll do something, a little special for that, but I can't make any promises. Anywho, 4-year anniversary. It's pretty amazing. And now I'm just hearing about this Pi token again for the first time in a long time. I saw some people, they were reaching out to me saying that this token was trading at like $34 or something like that on some random I forgot where it was, but it wasn't the official token, obviously. This is, as far as I'm aware, the official token. So hence why I'm deciding to give you my official update. Now, when it comes to tutorials of how to actually sell your Pi tokens, I personally haven't looked up any. So if there's any members in our community, I guess I should say I don't have one to share with you at the moment. So if there's any members in our community here that could be so kind as to share a simple tutorial video with us, I'm sure we'll all appreciate it. And again, to be 100% honest, I just personally couldn't find a single new video that covers how to actually send your Pi tokens from mainnet to an exchange it's listed on. And I believe there's at least a handful of exchanges that you can sell this project on. So yeah, I am not sure at the moment of how you could do it personally, but of course I'm insanely busy with Waters Above University and everything else I have going on here, so I don't have the time to be doing a deep dive into this right now. So it'd be great if someone here has a step-by-step tutorial on how to sell these coins. So yeah, that'd be an amazing resource for our community to have. And lastly, I personally have never invested in Pi tokens. I've only earned them through the mining on the phone app like most of you, and I'm not recommending anyone here to actually invest in this project. I'm also not telling any of you here to sell all your tokens. Of course, do your own research and do what's best for you. No one knows what the fair value of this project is. It's all speculation. And with a fresh chart, there's no way to actually do TA on it. But I do suspect once we've moved through this 5-day period that I just brought up, this kind of like letting you know about the removal of the tokens if you do not complete their mainnet checklist, so that we could definitely see some noticeable volatility on the charts on that 5-day mark. It's typically how these things go. And who knows, maybe this was launched at the perfect time to ride the wave of a potential future alt season, but the fact that this project is already at rank number 12 market cap, I believe, out of all cryptocurrencies, even higher than Chainlink when I last looked at it. Maybe it's changed because, you know, these things are kind of all going to change very rapidly by the time you watch this video. But again, all speculation like most of these situations, but hey, at least we didn't have to pay to be a part of what I guess is sort of an experiment. And I guess hopefully soon we'll learn how to sell these coins for those that would like to take advantage of that opportunity, especially the ones that have earned $1,000 or more on this for absolutely nothing, just clicking a button on your phone once in a while. Then congratulations, you know, I'm sure you're glad that you took that suggestion at the time. Now, getting back to our Eclipse season, we've effectively moved into, let's get back to this chart. So back on May 26, 2021, we can see that about 3 days before the Eclipse season, right here on May 23rd, which was a Sunday, by the way, that was a pretty nasty move to the downside, which then was bought back up in the same day plus the following day, and then we actually had a slight recovery into the actual day of the lunar eclipse. So note, from this top that we had down to the swing low, that was already a almost 55% correction for Bitcoin, and it ended about 1 week before. Now, so far today, we've only had a 28% correction leading into our lunar eclipse and our lunar cycle, so not nearly as devastating as it was back then. And when looking back at what happened to XRP during this same phase, XRP dropped 66% into the lunar eclipse in May of 2021. Today, although XRP has dropped around 47% into the February 3rd flash crash, it actually is only down around 30% right now compared to the same exact timing we were just analyzing for that May time frame in 2021 for XRP. So again, 30% compared to 66%. It's feeling a little different right now. And of course, we still have a couple more days to go. It's still a Sunday. The traditional markets could definitely bring some craziness for us tomorrow, but just letting you know where we're at, right? And funny enough, based on percentages, I believe Solana is actually doing the almost identical thing that it was doing back then in May of 2021. Let me turn off these indicators so there's no mess, no noise. And we're just looking at from right here over to, so our Eclipse is here. Got about 3 days before. You can see it's about 58% down. Now, if we go to where we are today, from top, about 53% down. So the full swing, it's pretty crazy, 57%. So nearly identical to back then, to the day. But consider, 3 days before this lunar eclipse was a pretty bad flash correction, and 3 days before our upcoming lunar eclipse is this Tuesday. So if we were to really just match the timing for you guys, so you have full transparency of what we're doing right now. So let's just call it that this upcoming Monday, tomorrow, and Tuesday, that'll be March 10th and March 11th, have room for a tornado to run through this entire market. And I believe that's probably because of all the nonsense going on with this overreaction to Trump's tariffs and the traditional markets and other things that you're all probably hearing everyone talk about on repeat. And I believe CPI is on Monday too, Consumer Price Index. So when you add this to the mix, it's the definition of adding fuel to the fire, especially with the timing getting closer to the eclipse. And also the fact that March 9th through 15th is like Black Swan Central in our recent history. Perhaps some of you know about an older event that hasn't happened recently, and it was the FDR Emergency Banking Act. Let me see if I have that. Yeah, I do. So funny enough, today will be the 92nd anniversary of that ritual, but FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Emergency Banking Act, almost immediately after he became president back in 1933. Immediately after he was inaugurated. I believe inaugurations used to happen back in March for quite a while. I don't know when they stopped that, but it's kind of irrelevant. The point is that this was a March 9th event specifically. There was a banking holiday held on the 6th, and we'll get onto this in a second, but I just want to read you really quickly what this says for those of you cool kids that are driving right now for whatever reason, listening to a TA podcast. But anyways, I love you guys too. You're amazing. What is it called? I don't know how you do it. I hope you're safe. Maybe you have one of those like self-driving cars or something. But anyways, I was gonna say multitaskers. So getting back to this event, we had, after a month-long run on American banks, Franklin Delano Roosevelt proclaimed a bank holiday beginning on March 6th that shut down the banking system. When the banks reopened on March 13th, depositors stood in line to return their hoarded cash. So yeah, you guys could go read all about this. Pretty fascinating stuff. You have Federal Reserve history right here. It's a lot of information if you wanted to get into it. And ooh, that's crazy. Proclamation 2039. I wonder what they're saying there for the year 2039. I don't know. I haven't decoded this fully yet, but there's some things that I've talked about in the past regarding 1933. I mean, if you have my crypto mastermind course, you probably heard what I shared about the things they were doing with gold. Fun times. But yeah, the Emergency Banking Act was officially passed on March 9th. So that's the point of why I'm bringing this up right now. And now when it gets to the whole ritual, we actually had the banks started to reopen on March 13th and March 14th. So it's literally the day of our upcoming total lunar eclipse. But one thing that I find fascinating about 1933 is the eclipses we had that year. Let me show you. I believe I have that saved. Yes, I do. Okay, so you see right here, it said 1933 had 6 eclipses. Mamma mia. 2 solar eclipses and 4 lunar eclipses. So we're looking at all the eclipses in 1933. And what I find fascinating about this is that the eclipses were super similar to guess what year? 2020. We had 6 eclipses, 2 solar eclipses and 4 lunar eclipses, and tons of these penumbral eclipses. Like, so of course in 2020, in March, we had the C-19 scamdemic start, declared by the WHO on March 11th, and the market, the entire market, including crypto, crashed into March 13th. So this is pretty fascinating when you have this type of event occur during a solar cycle, and not in a Shemitah year. There's a couple of things that are fascinating to talk about with this, but I just find the eclipse setup to be incredible how they match with 1933, 2020. Of course, we had so many crazy things happen in March. The March crash with banks, interest rates, oil went to like a negative per barrel. You guys, if you study this shit, it's wild. So yeah, it's cool that I found this just on a whim. And obviously that's pointing to, well, we don't have this type of eclipse year here in 2025. So perhaps that's not worth getting too excited about, even though we are stepping into like one of the most historically volatile weeks in general. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think you'll appreciate what I'm about to share. The next year that had eclipses similar to 2020 and 1933 will be the year 2027. And this is very interesting because it will also be the year before a Shemitah year, just like 2020. So yeah, the year of the goat is going to be super interesting. And I remember this iPet Goat series. I forgot who made it again. Doesn't really matter, but it's like, oh shit, was that the thing that they were telling us? Like, I have to go redo the I have to like actually do a decode, but I have to rewatch that because that connection right here to the eclipse structure. Let me quickly show you. I mean, it's not identical, but it's a lot more like 2020 or 1933. So we have a bunch of these penumbral eclipses and no actual full total lunar eclipses, but we do have the 2 full solars. So yeah, pretty wild. 2027, year before Shemitah year of the goat. Maybe something going on here. Anyone who knows about iPet Goat, by the way, feel free to share some of your thoughts. But I remember one of the most interesting things in that specific decode was the scorpion's tail at the very end, where they show you like the Giza plateau is in a flood, and like the pyramids are covered in ice, and the pyramids are starting to like break apart. And there's like all these solar flares coming out, and there's a scorpion's tail in the background. Thing obviously might be pointing to Scorpio. So, going into the astrology here without going too deep, it's like you have this the late October time frame, but in sidereal you have effectively moving into like what we would call the Saturnalia time frame. So October through December of 2027, what are they telling us? What are they telling us? Be interesting. But getting back to March 9th through March 15th, a lot of you probably already know about the Ides of March, the assassination of Julius Caesar. There were some things that I talked about with regards to that in my last full-length decode that I put out, the Black Moon Decoded. But this time frame is always full of surprises. Now let me just quickly recap all of them so you can know what I'm talking about. Hide all the drawings. So we have last year, Bitcoin topped actually for the year pretty much until we got to the very end, but like it was our initial top on March 13th. The year before, 2023, when I go over to the March timeframe, you will have that retail banking black swan event with the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate, and even some big issues going on with Credit Suisse. And this sank the crypto market into March 10th. And then we were fully recovered by March 13th, pretty much pushed through the whole thing in a V-shaped recovery and then even pushed higher by March 17th, just literally the next Friday. So this is the type of crap that we could deal with, guys, once market opens tomorrow. Like, it could be some very quick rip the band-aid off stuff. And I'll show you a couple other reasons why. Then we have the last bear market, be March of 2022. And you're going to see right here, March 13th of 2022 was the lowest daily close for the entire month of March before pivoting bullish to a short-lived rally into the end of the month. And this was really interesting considering March actually ended with the highest price Bitcoin traded at technically for the entire year of 2022. So it marked our top last year until we got all the way into the end of the year, past Eclipse season. And then it was also the top of our bear market year of 2022 before we keeled over and had an even deeper correction into May. So it's a fun little fact about that. I mean, it was just literally slightly higher than New Year's Day of 2022. And then 2021, we have this move right here, which was March 13th, 2021. The market topped. And this is arguably where Bitcoin started showing signs of slowing down in that bull run. It's also kind of when the alt season started going really wild. Then, of course, we have the prior year, which we just talked about a little bit, the C19 crash, which you can see March 13th on a Friday the 13th. Yay. Yeah. So this was the lowest that Bitcoin traded for the entire year of 2020. Another significant data point. And a majority of this crash actually happened on the 12th. You're all well aware that on the 11th, the WHO declared the pandemic, and then pretty much the markets were sent tumbling after that. So, as you can see, in just the past 5 years, we've had significant moves into the dates of March 13th through March 14th, and the fact this time here in 2025, we have a total lunar eclipse on that exact date, well, it's obviously a potential to be ritualized. And as many of you are aware, just a couple days ago on March 7th, we had this quote, meeting of the greatest minds in crypto gathering together at the White House Crypto Summit. And the fact this was held on March 7th actually puts it in an eerily similar time frame to what occurred here. This Emergency Banking Act in 1933. So this time around, they gather all these so-called leaders in the crypto space. Many of the top crypto exchanges, of course, are there. And we know that the real meeting happened in secrecy, but in the live meeting, all we got to really see was probably the most cringy thing I've ever witnessed. It was literally about nothing. And then they passed the microphone around and let these alleged geniuses glaze Donald Trump's donut for 20 seconds each. It was awkward. And obviously, as I said a moment ago, of course, the real meeting went down in private. We all know that. Just like the Emergency Banking Act, meetings happened in private. And one thing they actually did tell us that they were going to do was their plans to keep now this is a quote, their plans to keep the US dollar as the dominant currency of the world, and that they were going to ensure they'll get away with this. Get ready. Drum roll, please. They'll get away with this with stable coins. Yay. So they're just telling us the main plan. And this is going to hurt some people's feelings, but it's the Red Pill podcast. You have to be ready to take the red pill. But like I've said all along, they're just creating a CBDC, but they won't call it a CBDC because they knew if they wanted to accomplish their globalist goal that they would need to demonize something, which of course is the central bank digital currency, and make everyone who is savvy enough to even know what that is, quote, hate whatever they're researching that it is, and then after a few with a platform, showcase their hate for this plan, the apex predator will come up with a way to make you believe that so-called plan is canceled. while they're coming up with the same exact thing as the original plan behind the scenes, just with a different wrapping paper on it. This is what I would call a true surprise gift. Now, please don't mistake what I'm sharing right now as pessimism or being defeatist. You should know by now that my work is dedicated to being neutral about all of this. And whenever there was people cheering for Trump after he won the election, I responded with saying, be careful, because you don't know what you're cheering for. Remember when everyone thought they'd get rich tomorrow because of the Trump situation winning the election? And how within 24 hours of him winning, I went on Good Morning Crypto Show to tell everyone to just calm down, because this level of excitement will eventually be weaponized against us. Well, look at the market right now. It's clearly the case. The ironic part about all of this is that when Biden got elected, Bitcoin went up like I think 90% from the day of his inauguration to the March top. Like, I say ironic because everyone like talks so much shit about that guy, but like look at what we're dealing with today. Like, life is more expensive than it's ever been. People are getting laid off and the market's down within the day of Trump getting elected or inaugurated, excuse me. Now, please understand, I'm not trying to divide any of us here who actually still believe in these politicians, but my point here is that we just have to stay neutral to all of this, no matter what you believe in. Now, I personally stopped believing in politics almost 20 years ago. So it's been so many years now of just not giving a shit, and I've watched the world just get more and more compliant as the years progress. And here we are. It's worse today than it was 10 years ago. Now, I do not want you to think that I have zero optimism, because I do. But it's just never going to be optimism based on what politicians promise us. So I hope now that we've really gotten that out of the way, we can stay on track here. And when it comes to a recap of what happened at the White House Crypto Summit, there's honestly zero takeaway from what they aired live. It was just a Trump glaze roundtable. St. Michael Saylor was falling asleep. Brad Garlinghouse was daydreaming. It was a mess. It was honestly, it's not even worth it. Now, as for the World Cup trophy that people keep sending me pictures of, I mean, we could look into that further, I suppose, since the next World Cup will be wrapping up a little under a month before the total lunar eclipse in mid-August 2026. But that's too far away right now to put any energy into decoding that. But I will definitely circle back to that in the future if you guys remind me. It'd actually be the perfect thing to add to my Year of the Horse decode. That will actually, I just thought about it. I'm almost certain that the Year of the Horse, Chinese New Year, it will start on an annular solar eclipse. Just came to my mind. February 17, 2026. That's massive. That'll also be our next annular solar eclipse. Let me get to this so you guys can see that I'm not just making this stuff up. So here we are, we're looking at the eclipses. February 17, 2026 will be our next full eclipse, basically, our next full solar eclipse, the annular solar eclipse, which I don't want to say this confidently, but it's going to be one of two things. And one of them is that either we are potentially in the shortest lunar cycle in Bitcoin's trading history, since in 2018 and 2019, there was only 3 total lunar eclipses before our total solar eclipse. And here in 2025 into our next year, we technically only have 2 lunar eclipses. Sorry, let me show you right here. We only have 2 lunar eclipses before we have an official solar eclipse in mid-February 2026. So this is potentially making me think that it could turn out like 2015 if we are going to have a like really unfortunate year this year, which I do suspect, even if we do, that there will be some relief rally before it all ends. And I know I'm not alone when I say this. Like, even like people have been sending me stuff from like Alessio Rostani, who's very, very, respected, talking about the potential move up into, the next 3-4 months or so. And a lot of analysts that he's had on his show. So I'm not one necessarily to change my outlook or adjust my outlook based on what other people are thinking, but it's just I know I'm not alone in that. awareness. Now, whether it's a higher high, new all-time high, or whether it's just a lower high bull trap, all in all, it's still just kind of how markets end. They don't just keep sliding and sliding and sliding and sliding and sliding without any relief rallies along the way, because typically the way that it works is the market maker wants to get everyone to dramatically overreact in one direction, and then now they pop it up in the other direction to trap you again in what's called a bull trap. So we haven't had a technical bull trap just yet, and we have some things to say about the S&P 500 in a moment that also kind of alludes to the technical setup for what would be a textbook bull trap. So I'll get to that in a moment, but I won't cover too much about my thoughts on what this upcoming lunar cycle is going to be like just yet, because we need to focus on one thing at a time. But it's kind of making me think that the 2015 year is actually quite similar to this year in 2026. That example that we were just showing, where we actually started our recovery into the first total solar eclipse we had in that cycle, which I cannot confirm is the way it'll all go down, but that would match the March 20th solar eclipse in 2015 with our February 17th solar eclipse in next year, 2026. So that would be really wild to see that happen. Remember, I've been saying in the past couple podcasts that I don't feel that Bitcoin has 70 to 80% corrections anymore. Like, you see this one right here, this is a 55 or 56% total from there to there. Well, Bitcoin, if people believe that we've topped, and many do now, if we were to take that full measurement of 56%, what this does is this puts us around 47K, which was actually, you look at where the last time we had these prices. Go back here. It would be breaking below the structural lows that we had all of last year, which would very much feel like a bear market. But you see this red line across the screen? That's about where the fourth solar eclipse of our solar cycle was. And the measurement between there and 47 is about what we usually see. Now, I'll cover that probably in its own isolated video, but I don't believe we're going to have 70 to 80% corrections for Bitcoin anymore. And I think the fact that we have Bitcoin dominance going up so much, it kind of supports that theory even more. And also the passing of this strategic Bitcoin reserve, it's another thing that could kind of be a part of the timing of all of this that we could actually have sometime later this year in 2025. They admit or come out and say that they're going to do something about purchasing Bitcoin, which they did not talk about doing this time around. And then all we would obviously need is something like QE or something where the Fed just says like, hey, print or go burr, and then obviously market overreacts in the other direction. But that's kind of hopium vibes. I'm just letting you know my feelings on this. So if we were to have a much, much deeper correction from this point forward, it might only be the correction that we had from top to bottom at the start of our lunar cycle in the last iteration. And then because of the eclipse energy that we're getting for 2026 kicking in so early, we might actually be balanced and not continue falling and falling and falling throughout the whole year of 2026 like some might imagine. So kind of interesting setup, but because we just had recently our lunar cycle, start of our lunar cycle actually happened the exact way that we had it happen back in 2021 and also 2018 and also 2014, it's like we can't bet against these things ever. You know what I mean? And that's why like I'm very serious about the way that I teach this stuff. Of course, there's no way to be perfect in teaching this stuff because there's how many altcoins right now? There's like 50,000 of them. We talk about 4 to 5 every single week. How many have we covered over a full year? You do the math. These are hundreds of projects that we're looking at on a yearly basis. And there are some that tend to repeat patterns, but what just happened with Ethereum was kind of weird, right? Like we did not see expansion in ETH. We didn't also see Solana have price discovery. That's also weird for the amount of activity going on that blockchain. A lot of the top players didn't have price discovery. So this is very, very interesting. We might not have that full like kind of bear market vibe that we had back in this cycle, for instance, or like the really, really fucked up one that we had back here. Now, again, speculation, but I'm just saying that there is something to this. The fact that we had a very similar kind of eclipse structure in the year of 2015. So don't worry, guys. I will obviously be tracking this week by week as we progress, and I will definitely provide you with value specifically for my thoughts on how 2026 will go a little bit later in the year. Now, if that was the case, that we were to just continue sliding in the short term, then we're potentially looking at that 2001 year of the snake example. Let me pull that up because we talked about it just last week, so many of you should know what I'm talking about right now. We went through every year of the snake example, and we saw that 7 out of 8 of them all had the same pattern. Well, guess which one didn't? Likely the one that's fucking playing out now. You know, like, it's just so great that we're getting these wild cards, you know, because wild cards are there. They show you, like, the market maker's always trying to keep you on your toes. It makes obviously my job very difficult, but it also makes my job a little bit more experimental, and it also gives new rules to follow, and kind of makes the investing process an opportunity to just learn instead of, you know, complain, blame, and be like, oh, we're in a bear market, or oh, we did. Like, none of that stuff exists in my world, and that's kind of the commitment you need to make to yourself if you want to make it through these market cycles. But that's just market philosophy 101. Getting back to this, we're talking about that one example, the one time in history where the S&P slid down further through to the end of March with at least a small relief rally. It did not have even a small relief rally into the 13th or 16th of March, like we saw in the other 7 iterations. So this was just sliding through the whole month of March, basically, which kind of feels like we've started initiating right now. And since we had another week down recently in the traditional markets, unless there's a wild isolated situation that saves these markets from falling lower, then all we'd have to base things off of is this 2001 example here, which was the worst case scenario, or one of our worst case scenarios. But this scenario, like several other snake year iterations, had a dramatic relief rally into May. You see that? And now, again, we're going higher into May than we did when we were in the start of March, and most of the month of February, we were just falling the whole time. So consider this. Obviously, we would also be in a very different structure today than back here, and I'll maybe touch on that in a moment. But the reason I call this dramatic is because if I was to pull a fib from that swing high to the swing low, so you see from right here to right here, look at where we got rejected. Yeah. So we perfectly topped at the top of the golden pocket and got rejected at the 786 fib before this turned into a very elusive dead cat bounce. Because look, you have a bull flag, and then it says, well, it's not a bull flag. I take that back because you were in a downtrend, but I'm just saying that the way the market maker dealt with you on this is, look, just massive correction. Relief bounce. No one expected it. Oh, we're going to recover. This is it. You know, this is it. Nope. Drawdown, and the speed of the drawdown was so arduous. And look at that. Absolute destruction. You know, the way they do this shit is to take the most money from the most people, right? Save that quote if you guys haven't heard of it before. It's very important to know. These structures can be very, very elusive. So this was a dramatic relief rally, and it went into the month of May. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. At this time back in Q1 of 2020, the S&P was already well below a technical target called the 200 simple moving average, the 200 MA. It's going to be this one green line on the screen. So we're talking about 2001 starts around here. We have a relief rally over here. Well, we were well below it, all right? And the market already topped back in March of 2000, coincidentally, in the same month we're talking about. So back then, there was already quite a bit of weakness in the market over a sustained period of time. We're talking about a year, leading into when this really started to break down. Because if we look at the horizontal structure right here, you see where I'm holding my cursor right there? You have this bounce, chop, chop, like one spring, obviously, but chop, chop, chop. And then when we came back to it on the other side, it started to get real nasty into March of 2001, which is what we're talking about, the year of the snake, 2001. Now, when we broke down through that, that was already after a very sustained downtrend in the making. This was just the confirmation of like a deeper, worse bear market, right? So that is different from today. Whilst when we check in with today's market, which is necessary, and you zoom out and you see that we've been at all-time highs now for a long time. We've been printing new all-time highs in price discovery going on pretty much full 2 years, you know? So right now we're technically looking more like the year 2000 or the year, and I hate to say this, 2007 or 2020. This is what I'm talking about in 2020. Yeah, unfortunately, all three of those examples didn't turn out well. And as you can all, imagine. So this makes the, I'm going to show you the exact levels so you can save it in your charts and you could have something technical to look at. If we were to bounce from today's levels, which is at a technical level of the 200 symbol moving average, then we would want to pull our fib as we did before. You can see that this whole fall is just getting started. You would have somewhere around the 6,000 point area that you really want to treat as dangerous territory for the S&P, because this is around the level that if there were to be a relief rally and we couldn't push through it, then it'll turn into a lower high bull trap, and that could roll over into a dead cat bounce, which is effectively what we saw in 2001 into the month of May. That would have taken a little bit longer. That would be actually kind of in alignment with a lot of the analysis that I've been sharing for the idea of moving into the month of August this year, which August for me is kind of like the latest I see this working out till, you know, based on all the technical things and all the esoteric things that I've compiled, you know, like it's going to be, that would be like the latest time frame that I see things being overheated if we are to get a dramatic relief bounce and actually continue higher into price discovery, of course. And this is essentially how the 2022 bear market started for both Bitcoin and the S&P. So you see right here, I'm going to quickly show you this, what I mean by that when I said this is how the 2022 bear market started. So you see this slide here, look at where it pivots, March 14th, and then this shit just goes up in a straight line, and then all the way to the end of March, and then boom, hits the 702 fib. It gets into that golden pocket, and then it rolls over, dead cat bounce, and it went into a bear market. All right, so that's what I'm saying. I don't think we've actually had deep enough of a correction yet. But this aligns 6,000 points on the S&P with a 100K Bitcoin. Again, kind of an annoying number to have to say to you out loud because it's like this clean psychological level. Now, the only non-technical outcome we can have this week would be the Black Swan event situation, which is what happened in 2020 with the C19 scam, or similarly in the year 2001, which also experienced that like free fall drop throughout the month of March. Well, the vibe in the markets right now, and I think many of you can agree, is that with the Trump narrative burning red hot, the question is, do they keep milking that fear out of everyone, or do they throw something spicy into the mix, and this all ends up just being a big bear trap fake out leading into the next FOMC meeting on March 19th, kind of perfectly sandwiched between our lunar eclipse next week and the following partial solar eclipse on March 29th at the end of the month. And when looking at the Bitcoin charts and the traditional markets, that's kind of how this feels right now, you know, because the markets specifically are overreacting to all of this, kind of like the C19 thing. And what I'm talking about is the tariffs and everything going on with the false Trump pump, etc. So it's just a very dramatic overreaction to everything. But this past Friday was very interesting across the board because we didn't only have the White House crypto summit, we also had Fed Chair Powell state that he's, quote, not worried about the economy, unquote, which kind of makes me worried. Whenever these guys say they aren't worried, I'm like, ugh, I should start getting worried. But anyways, when he gave his remarks this past Friday, this occurred. We had a bit of a bounce, and at a very important level, the technical level of the 200 SMA. The and when I zoom out, like, look at this level over here. We get a big rejection off this level. We gravitate right back to it. Another little higher kind of VW deal. And then when we popped above it, we back tested it. And that was very clean because that was the moment we could confirm we're pushing higher into price discovery. And where we just back tested was that exact level on a wick. And then we've bounced. Pretty much recovering. The whole day is green on Friday. So this level that I have drawn on the screen is like what I would consider one of those need to hold levels. But unfortunately, in this environment, which is price discovery, things are so incredibly volatile that you can have a single event that changes everything. And if there's any time frame for that to go down, well, it's over the next couple weeks. With tomorrow's market open being probably one of the most important, because we'll need to see how the traditional markets push up from here. Otherwise, all of the traditional markets are sort of flirting with their respective 200-day moving averages or other critical levels of consideration where the whole market would be looking at for technical analysts in the world, or they're at make or break levels, so this is pretty much the easiest way to summarize what's going on. And it's being tested as we open up this fresh weekly candle tomorrow for the traditional markets regarding those make or break levels. So again, getting back to crypto, we all know how this last Monday went for us. We had this, let me show you, we had the Twin Towers candles. And it's funny because some people wished that I would have made my Red Pill podcast after that surprise post by Trump, since everything went down, so that I could have reviewed that move. But the fact it was narrative driven and we returned back to the exact technical level that I told you all to look out for, which was 94K Bitcoin, then it shows that the technical analysis that was in that red pill was accurate regarding the levels to keep an eye on. And we did in fact get rejected at that exact level with a deeper pullback. And now all these gains that we had momentarily have returned back to the same exact spot as last week. Remember, we formed an insanely large CME gap at this moment. I'm going to quickly make sure that this is all covered. Let me see. Crazy CME gap that we had. It's like unbelievable. I think it's the only day in the history of Bitcoin where we closed two gaps in the same day. Like, never before have I seen anything like this. But when I go to the 4 hour, like, look at this mess. So we had gap here, and then we had this major gap from there to there, and we swiped through one and the whole second gap. And then we've just started to chop a little bit, for the rest of the week. But that all went down on Monday, Tuesday. Now today, I mean, fuck, if I record this and then another crazy thing happens immediately after the red pill, then it's like, what's going on, man? Either the elite are like watching, they're signed up mastermind community members, or we like can confirm we live in a matrix, but as of right now, we're like right around where the CME would actually form a little bit of a gap to an upside, or it would just be neutral. So nothing to worry about there. But that was definitely lame, the fact that we had this exoteric Trump post that sent the market really high for pretty much no reason. And then a lot of things that were leading into this White House crypto summit were false documents or false lists of people that would show up, like Charles Hoskinson, etc. And there was plenty of these fake lists circulating that people were trying to like pump around X to try to get some, more market movement or belief in speculative investments based on those particular projects, such as Cardano, with the announcement that came from Trump. And then I believe Sachs said that that Trump wouldn't have even known the projects. He just like listed the top 5, which again, we know Trump did not make that post. His handlers made that post. It's probably like one of his kids that did it, right? So I'm not throwing shade at the man. It's just he's not involved in this whole thing. You can tell when he signed the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, he basically said on camera, he was like, and you believe in this? Like, he talked to the other dude. This guy isn't making Trump isn't making these executive orders. He was like, and we kept our promise, right? Like, do you think it's a good idea? He was basically like, you think it's a good idea? I guess I'll sign it. Like, it was so bad, you know? Like, it's clear that this is all just a bigger agenda that he's being the leader of, you know, he's being the talking head of. So it's like you can't even be mad at the guy. He's just doing what puppets do. Anyways, getting back to this, the only thing that we could really compare what just recently happened to with the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve would be the Bitcoin ETF launch. They're not the same though, we know that, but I'm just saying like the gravity of the situation. It would just be one of those firsts when it comes to a milestone for this asset and this entire asset class. But obviously, if you know about what's going on, the huge difference is that Trump or Sachs did not say they will be buying Bitcoin or any other digital assets, which I know the market was hopeful for. So truly all this was like a big dramatic acknowledgement. That's all. And until they say that they are actually buying Bitcoin, like in the situation with the ETFs, the market will be in this lull, held down by this eclipse energy, which of course we expected. Although the fact we didn't have an overall alt season before this eclipse season, that was the miscalculation. Well, because that's what we experienced every other cycle before this one, that was the data I was working with. And with only a couple cycles to analyze, it's obviously a very small data set to work with. But all in all, I know I'm not the only one in my outlook for a recovery phase after we get through this March chaos. You know, we could call it March Madness. It's a very fitting title. Now let's get into the charts, starting with Bitcoin on the weekly, and see how this is panning out for our upcoming weekly close, which is not looking so awesome. It's about 8% down so far. But I want to just turn off all the noise and keep this EMA band, which I feel is a good starting point for today. Back to the basics, keeping things simple. And you'll see that the last year, we actually had something similar occur into early July, right here. And you'll notice this has everything to do with the EMAs. So what happened was we have chop sideways, we have a break of our support, and then the same candle with the break of the support actually turns out to be like kind of like a hammer candle. But then the following candle is a big red candle that holds support on the 34 EMA. We're looking at the weekly, by the way, guys. And even this micro double top that we had right here is about the same distance apart. It's like 5 to 6 weeks apart. So let me just show you. We go off of here, got about 42 days. Got about from here. I would like this candle to be almost similar to this candle just because it was red and it kind of brought you into this little bowl shape. Got about 42 days. And then from here, we're looking at about 35 to 42 days. So it's pretty damn similar. And the fact that we broke the structure with the same, with this vibe of candle over here, and then dumped with the big red candle the following week, that to me shows there's a lot of similarities, and I have something else to show you. So, you know, I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. When we look at the weekly RSI, we could also see similarities. So this was the time frame we were just dipping below the 50 zone on the weekly RSI. So it's a very similar setup, and we'd ideally want to hold the 34 weekly EMA, not only for today's weekly close, but also for the rest of this month of March. And given it's eclipse season, well, that's the time frame where we have anomalies that tend to happen. So there's no rule set in stone that we absolutely need to hold the 34 EMA on the weekly, because look at what we had happen back here. After having literally 8 weeks of holding it as a support, we had a week close below it, and that was your bear trap week. That was the week where the market said, boom, opposite of what everyone could have expected. Here's a similar vibe too. Multiple weeks trading below and then just pivots out of nowhere after a bunch of sideways, just like this was a bunch of sideways. Now, obviously, back at the end of our lunar cycle over here, we confirmed that there was some serious structural problems when we broke through the 34 EMA, and then we had many, many weeks of trading below it before we could pop back above. And that's that 2-month example that I've talked with you guys about, which would have like effectively started on this candle. So we went through this before. Like if there was to be a situation where we repeated a fractal like this, or we repeated a fractal like this, or we repeated a fractal like this, it would be around 2 months, starting off of the day where you have like the real significant sell volume push in. So I'm not making this stuff up. This is just, again, kind of Bitcoin's vibe. And this puts you to about the end of April. Now, the recovery could be happening in the final 2 weeks of that 2 month time frame. So it would just basically be a little bit, I mean, honestly, the pain part of it could just be very short term. And we could actually have one of these bounces come up next, which is the point of this specific analysis, was the fact that if we were to mimic this, we would have about 3 green weeks ahead. And it doesn't mean that we can't have a push lower in the process. So we can get a wick lower even if they really wanted to shake us out, and then have it still go higher. Just like March 10th in this week over here, where we had on the March 10th correction, hammer candle reversal, and then look at this 1 week, 26% up in a single week. Again, not making this stuff up. This is just the nature of the month of March. It's crazy, okay? So, got Eclipse season. You guys know all the rest. So, of course, a lot of this depends on the energy of the traditional markets this week, especially now that, now more than ever, retail is scared shitless of this market. And when we look at the fear and greed index, we actually have been now in sustained fear with almost 2 weeks and most days checking in on that indicator under 30. So it's been like maybe 2 days over the last 2 weeks that we were a little bit above 30, but we've pretty much been sub 30 on the fear and greed index now, going on like 13 to 14 days. Now, it's moments before, like when we get into this sort of vibe, which is not often, we actually see these are the moments where the relief bounces. Like, I'm not trying to give you hopium right now, but you can go back and look at this indicator yourself and map through it as much as you want. And even during the C19 crash, we reached that level of 10 and that level of 14, which we fucking touched that last week or like the week before. And then we sustained under here for like pretty much 2 full weeks of just being in fear and having isolated days of extreme fear. And then that was where we had this V-shaped recovery style vibe. Now, obviously, we have not pulled down nearly as much as we did in Bitcoin for that C19 crash. But when we look at the amount of dollars that are circulating through this market, yes, we have. The amount of losses in this market from what we've seen at the top of the inauguration, and if you were to include all the shit coins that are going on, like the Hawk Tuah coin and the Trump coin disaster and the Melania thing, Libra, I mean, all of these influencers right now that are taking a couple of $100,000 to promote a scam pump and dump on Solana, you know, like that's a lot more money than we were dealing with during the C19 crash. So this to me feels like a very important thing to talk about, where we could be, not only from a technical perspective, but just from like a sentiment perspective, expecting a short-term reversal soon. And I should be careful using the word reversal, but at least a relief rally, which could unfortunately set up to be a dead cat bounce, but at least you know it's coming so that you can do something about it. Especially important for Solana holders, ETH holders, Bitcoin holders, XRP, anyone who's in XLM, XDC. Like, these are projects that have done pretty damn well. So if you're in profits, there's nothing wrong with de-risking. We've been talking about this nonstop for 2 months now, right? So anyways, getting back to this chart right here, which I covered in my recent YouTube video. I know a lot of you probably have seen this chart before, but I just wanted to go back to it and like kind of show you that there is a striking similarity between this Wyckoff reaccumulation and the fact that we're either have completed the spring or we're in the process of the spring. And the clear indication here is this creek. So I taught everyone in the video, the creek kind of is this weird, almost bull flag that turns out to be a extended, drawn out, arduous kind of reversal with weakness coming back to the prior macro support. Then obviously you can look at the way that we fall out of this creek, because it's about free fall speed, very similar to the way a spring would go, which means a spring has significant sell volume and also typically tied to a narrative. Like if I wanted to show you what a macro spring is, it's the C19 crash. It's this. This was a macro spring. So we have buying climax at the top of a bull run, a blow off top. Then we have selling climax at the exaggerated most selling volume, so exhausted that you can't go lower. Then you have this J curve automatic rally or automatic reaction topping out with a lower high. Then you have this really messed up move, because this, I'm sure every analyst was calling this a bull flag, like a macro bull flag, but it turned out to be a false rally, lower high, which then led to a black swan, right? Nobody could have possibly known that this would perfectly go down in this way. But the way it recovered, I think a lot of people could have tapped into, because the way the Fed was talking at the time. I personally started most of my investing around April, May of 2020, just because I already studied the Fed and I knew that they were going to do something in reaction to this. They said they were going to print us all to oblivion, so it just made the most sense to speculate, right? Getting back to this whole idea of the spring, that's a macro spring right there. This being a very short-term spring, and we can't fully confirm just yet because we would need a break above this level of 98K. And that I already talked about in my recent video. It's very tough because that would be pulling you into the relief rally zone, which we typically see is where we reverse from if we are to have the true end of the bull run, which, yeah, to have that occur with no alt season, very weird. And to have it occur with Bitcoin dominance in the 60% level, I mean, what is it, 61 today? Let me quickly check. Yeah, that's just fucking weird if it ended like that, dude. Whatever though. Like, I mean, again, just a very weird way for it to end. I don't think it's, I'm alone with this, saying this. So getting back to the charts, this is definitely a technical setup that we could see in Wyckoff. Lots of sell volume kicking in. This can just be thrown off your chart. Like you can just delete this from the chart because this is nonsense anyways. This whole move right here looks very similar to this. And then right now it feels like we're in the test, and that would be the best case scenario if we are in the test and we are about to hold these levels and not dump further, obviously in time for Eclipse season, and then pivot out into an LPS into the month of April, which again, statistically is our best performing month in the cycle. Let me show you right here. So yeah, let's get into the ETH chart. ETH looking, wow, that picture says a million words. So this is kind of like what looks like the end for ETH, you know? It's crazy to say, but this is kind of like the vibe where it's you've broken away from one of the most important trend lines the whole cycle, going back to the end of, or the middle of 2022, almost 1,000 days, and then you finally broke below it. So the thing that's going on here is kind of like you're hoping that this is just a backup phase, but the problem is the thought was this was already your backup phase, and it's not. Clearly, because now you're breaking lower and you're about to have another weekly close on a low. Although we are holding support from a cluster that was back here right around when the Bitcoin ETF launched. So if you wanted to compare time frames, I do find it fishy that if we look at when the Bitcoin ETF launched, it's the same fucking time at the same price, like the same concept and the same price as when we just had this strategic reserve announced. Kind of taking that theory and putting it into the ETH chart and trying to make some sense of it. Oh, by the way, this is important to say. Anyone who has my crypto mastermind or has been following my work for at least a year knows that I am primarily a fan of horizontal trading ranges. These diagonal lines, falling patterns, rising patterns, they're great and all, but thing that really matters most is horizontal levels. So that's where all the liquidity set anyways. There are a couple of times where you'll have some coincidences with these diagonal lines that are working in our favor, but it's not a true set in stone thing. For instance, I think this is a great example over here where we have this drop down, we have a automatic rally, and then look at after your spring, you have a SOS that perfectly back tested the top. This is just a horizontal level getting back tested. Now, in the process of this, there are going to be some lines that you could draw, you could have fun, but it's never the thing you should take the most seriously. The same thing with patterns. Patterns are fun. They're not always going to work out perfectly. Like a lot of people, I don't know them personally, but some people that I've heard of who were anticipating the head and shoulders to play out on XRP got into really bad leverage trades because it didn't turn out that way. Actually, it was the opposite. Now that play is not finished yet, but when you throw leverage into the mix, you have a lot of liquidations because people think they're absolutely right about the pattern. And the market maker is very smart, and they know not to let you off that easy. So what I'm saying right now is really geared towards those trading actively and utilizing leverage. But I gotta say, this is not looking pretty, and the reason, the only thing that I could say is the saving grace is the fact that we're backtesting the 0.5 fib, and we're backtesting a level that we've gotten rejected at twice over the bear market time frame. If that's the truth, that we're just doing that, then that is insanely bullish. So it's very teetering on the line right now. It's like what happened over here. Anyone who goes back to September 2020 and you watch Bitcoin channels, people were adamant that that was the end, and that correction that we got right there would sink us back down to the lows close to where the C19 crash was. I remember it vividly. Didn't happen. The opposite happened. And we were actually just back testing a very crucial level that we needed to after having a black swan event. So look at how quick this dramatic reaction was from the V-shaped recovery. It was a beautiful backtest that we got. This, on the other hand, was sloppy. The fact that we just shot up in a straight line all the way to this Christmas tree top, I remember this. This was not healthy. But right here, this moment was. Is that this moment and we're just in a more exaggerated version of it? Perhaps. Now, of course, if we can't hold this level, the next level you're dropping to is the 382. And then that's like your bear market, right? So this is really troublesome, and it's a sign that if we are to get any relief in Ethereum and you're not feeling so great about it, and you're somebody who's accumulated it at the bear market lows, or perhaps like you're a real long-term holder of ETH, like you accumulated this shit back in the last cycle and you didn't sell it in this cycle and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, then damn, man, you're probably up a lot right now. So like, don't try to be fancy. I mean, you're already up 700% if you just bought around the 382 from the last cycle. So yeah, just some words of wisdom there. Now look at XRP, see what's going on there. XRP has actually been doing really fucking good for the fact that we have so many things that have just been draining lately. So yeah, we have this fractal over here, which was the alt season of April 2021. And pretty much when I hold my cursor there and you look to the right of the screen, you're just going to see a bunch of backtests there. With this candle that we flashed down on February 3rd, we dug even deeper into it and we've filled out some levels that we just shot straight through. So in a lot of ways, it's very bullish. And then there's some other ways where it's like, sure, if you want to say that the head and shoulders is still in play and your pattern trade or whatever, like, but the way I'm looking at it is that there's something to the fact that we've been spending so much time above $2. You know, like this is a level where some people might think like, you know, there's no mojo to being at $2. But if you're an XRP holder, then you know what the hell I'm talking about. Because I've been holding this shit since it was like 22 cents, 21 cents. Watching XRP trade up at $2.30 when everything is super, super bearish is like one of the most bullish things we've ever seen in the history of this asset. So I'm not just glazing XRP right now. I'm just saying it is what it is based on a chart perspective. We still have a lot of altcoins right now that are at their bear market lows, while XRP is, you know, I mean, at least in today's terms, it's almost 500% up from the majority of the bear market. So that's a great thing to see. And as for any updates, it's really hard at this time to be saying how this can go because this made everything really awkward. And so far, we're actually slightly decoupling from that fractal that we were looking at. But again, the fractal is just a fractal. What matters most is, do we hold critical levels or do we break above critical levels? And at this time, we're just chopping sideways. It's the same horizontal trading level we've been in for almost 100 days since we got into $2. So obviously, if you can hold your structure, you're fine. But if you were to start closing dailies below $2, then you have a different conversation. And at this time, this does also look a little bit like this weird UT in phase D. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. And the question is, we're not going to have a perfect creek, but there's plenty of other reaccumulation schematics that have this vibe, and then they end in this V-shaped recovery style. So far, this could be a test. And the thing that we would want to look out for next is what would be called a sign of strength. So an SOS in this schematic would be price discovery. Obviously, with XRP in the macro, we want price discovery. We don't give a shit about $3 or whatever. Like, if you're somebody who's waiting on much higher levels, then this is just chop. And for those people that want to take the advice of de-risking because you were in all the way back here, then obviously there's nothing wrong with even the levels we're at now or getting into the $3 territory. But I don't personally think this was anything to put too much brain power into, this 290 thing. It was just all manipulation off of what happened with the Trump situation, whilst with Bitcoin that was a little bit more technical. This, not so much. The fact that we're holding support back at the same level though before we moved into this UT in phase B, I do like to see, because it could just be this rounding structure that we're experiencing before one more leg higher. And again, many analysts are kind of feeling this $4 XRP is more likely sooner than later. I suspect April, given all things work out in our favor. Now we're looking at Velo. I don't remember the last time I looked at this. Maybe 3-4 months ago. Ooh, yeah. Okay, crazy chart. So this is one of those that, like, it's just been perpetually falling. 99.95% of its value. I'm not sure if there was more supply out of this and it's been kind of diluted. Sometimes that happens with these projects, but I pulled a swing high from here to there on my fib, and we've just kind of been chopping up, heading towards that 1618 more and more. That's a nice thing to see, and structurally we're holding perfectly well. We just have higher lows all throughout here, big peak, holding structure, smaller but also followed by a bigger peak, and then still holding. So this looks pretty damn good. Perhaps a very massive parallel channel to consider. So we're gonna do one of these. Yeah, makes sense. And then, like, anytime you're getting above this was assigned to GTFO. So interestingly enough, I'm sure this was your best opportunity, most likely. Ooh, couple of trader's coin, you know, like a lot of opportunity if you want to trade this thing. One of the best strategies that, like, I would totally implement in the next cycle is when things lose like 99% of their value and you just want to play venture capital, get in, and then once they make one of these significant moves to the upside, like if they can move up even 700 or 800%, sell like 50% of it, you know, or 60%. This isn't financial advice, but I mean, shit, like if you went into this thing with $250 and they made 700% on that move right there, then now you're working with $2,000. So you take $1,000 out, you know, and then getting back in with this additional $1,000 right here, somewhere in this chop. You know, this took time. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect, but you got a 200 fucking day time frame to get in. And then, you know, you get out another 600% move or 500% move, you know, like, look at what we're doing here. There's a strategy to that too. So now you have 6. You started with 250, you have 6, and then you pocketed a bunch in the process too. And then just right there, that's insane move, you know, to turn $250 to, what is that technically, 7,500 total? Pretty, you know, and you just didn't have to hold the shit coin the whole way, you know, because this is very tough to hold through. And obviously you didn't want to hold through this, right? This was a falling to Hades. But knowing when we've bottomed out is very typical along with the Bitcoin move. It hasn't been the easiest call though this last bear market, and even right now. So I'm not saying that this would have been perfect. That's the point of the selling the 50% thing, because if you're obviously high in profits, then you're good. And I just told you $250. I mean, that's venture capital. That's not your whole life savings, I hope. So I mean, again, for some people it might be. Obviously, I'm not trying to make this be about that. It's just given that one little example of a couple $100 and seeing what you could do with it, selling 50% along the way, once or twice, pretty amazing. I mean, you would have done on that one, you would have done on that one play, I think you got $1,000 the first shot, you did 3,000 in the second shot. That's 4 G's out of 250. And then you could still play with the other, 3 and have fun and maybe put it in some other, pumpy dumpy nonsense too. So there's something to these strategies and that type of stuff. But as for right now, like it's feeling like we're actually kind of on a major trend support area, and we're back testing this yellow line, which I feel is huge for Velo, given the way that we fell into this deeper bear cycle within a bear cycle. You could see right there, we popped up to this major line that we've now come back to. So this might actually be the top for Velo unless we continue higher with the overall altcoin market, which would have to be contingent on Bitcoin. And the reason I say this is because you see how the way this cycle got to these particular levels, we couldn't hold them. We broke down, and then we got this move right there, which is really a sign of weakness because you're getting rejected at your prior support. Well, it was only a short-term support, but still, it mattered clearly, because then this thing took another, 80%? Fuck. Another 98% dump. So if you bought here and if you bought here, you still would have lost it all. That's how bad these things can get, dude, with venture capital. So look, you thought it was already shitty. 98% down. Let me add a little more. Nope. Because it could get worse. It just can get worse with these plays. So this was a critical level because that was already giving back all the gains of launch, and then it went again down. But then we've just made it back up there into that zone, the same zone. So I'd be super cautious with Velo right now. And if I was in profits because I bought anywhere back here, I would at least consider what I told you a moment ago, like the 50% profits, nothing wrong with that. And you'd be thankful you did, especially if we had another drop down to this other support trend line, which has been a basing trend line. If things get really squirrely, you saved yourself from another 40% drop. So keep that in mind. And then off of where we are now to the top of this trend line, I just don't feel like that's sufficient enough of a move for me to like really bank on, because we could clearly see exhaustion. So if we are to move up one more time, it should probably be in alignment with this technical 1618 target, like around 6 cents. The only thing I could say is if it was to have something isolated specifically to this project, there is thin air from here all the way up to here at 30 fucking cents. So this is again like venture capital. Hold a little bit of a bag forever if you've bought in at these lower levels, and the pain of a 50% correction from here doesn't even hurt you, Yeah. I just gave a lot of like investing wisdom there, so apply accordingly to whatever else you got going on. Sui. Now, this is a question I have for all you guys. I don't really trust many people in this space for obvious reasons, but what is our community's take on Sui, and why, oh why, do I hear so much about it? What is going on? Why won't people shut up about this? And I'm not trying to be an asshole, I'm just serious. Like, it's like every day I hear about this thing. Now, okay, sure, it's from the August lows. Awesome move, 800%, like you can't beat that. Amazing. Recently 50% correction, not that bad. Like many things have done this as well, so it's not like it's just shit coining itself to 80% dump like we've seen. Let's look at Trump real quick. I just want to have that moment. This has to be down like 80% minimum. Where are we at? Oh god. It's lower. Oh yeah, 80%. Yeah, let's be generous. 80%. God damn. And oof, not good. No. Structure, support, break, rejection at the support, confirmed resistance. This thing's going to fucking negative. It's going to negative dollars. Anyways, we warned about that mess. Now, this to me doesn't look like the greatest structure, but this is something it's done before, and the one thing to say is it got pretty bloody before it got better. So I don't know if Sui does have the gusto in it to also come back even significantly deeper, but we do have to say that we're working with venture capital and no chart history. This is very limited chart data. Yes, we have about 2 years, but what's that? It didn't go through the C19 crash. It didn't go through the euphoria of 2021. It didn't go through the 2022 bear market. There's nothing that we can use to determine what this can do and why it will do it besides just following either some narratives isolated to the project or what Bitcoin does, right? So, I mean, obviously, though, if you took this more seriously than Ethereum, that was a smart move, I guess, right? And then it's all just comparison at the end of the day, and that's what the ego is for. So, getting back to this, I mean, there's really few things that we could do to be savvy technical analysts besides just looking at a couple of indicators like RSI, seeing where things get a little bit overheated. But once you start getting into the weekly RSI, you're just working with such a limited data. Like, what do you do with this? You know what I mean? But yeah, like 80 on the RSI, how would you have known that that would be the top? That's nothing. That's nothing for an altcoin. Altcoin weekly RSI could be 95, right? So you're just so limited in the data is really, I guess, the big takeaway for everyone here. Couple of things to mention though is this heart line seems to be very respected going across this entire screen. Just look at where we're at right now, kind of dealing with a couple of major rejections on that level. That's also around your 1618. That's not a good level to be crashing through, because what happens is you can come straight back to your golden pocket. So if this is going to get sloppier, I would look for 180 on SUI, and then if you guys can convince me that I need to invest in this, then I'll add like 1 to 2% to my portfolio just for fun. Should I what's it called when you, I don't remember what the cool kids call it, when you like jump into YOLO into a project. I don't know, dude. I'm getting old. All right, so yeah, the 786 is typically a level that you come back to if this is going to get have a deeper correction. Now, it's not like that would be weird because we saw SUI already do this, like a 70, let's call it a 70% mid-cycle correction. That would be exactly a 70% mid-cycle correction for it to come back to 150. So 150 to 180. And we kind of flirted with that level before we took off into basically hitting the 1618. So like, I don't want to invest in this thing right now because of our market environment. And if shit was to flip very weird right now and this was only able to do the pull back to like $4 or whatever, and there's no flood into the altcoins, then this thing is just going to dead cat bounce and it's going to go straight back to sub dollar. Obviously, I'm not fully pessimistic and believe that this is the end of the bull run at all. I still see at least one more push up in general and some alt season, but it's about how do they pull that off. Well, Bitcoin needs to drain all of its dominance into the altcoins, and that's seemingly not the case right now. And there needs to be a catalyst for that, and there hasn't been. So yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things could be that if like they're like, we're gonna invest in XRP and not Bitcoin for our digital asset, stockpile thing, that would be the moment, right? You would see all of this drain out in that would be the craziest shit though. It's too good to be true, right? But if it happens, your boy Waters Above just spoke it into existence. Thank me later. Now, that tends to be what my work has done for the world for the past year. I like say some shit during the later stages of a red pill and then it fucking comes to life. It's weird. All right, we're looking at XYO. Yeah. Already almost to 80% correction and swipe through a very important level. Okay, so this is kind of like what an SOS can be like during a bull run, where it could be very exaggerated. Like over here, you already had like a 70% correction. This spike down, you also had like another almost 70% correction. Here, your mid-cycle correction was 76%, and then we had another swipe up, and we're pretty much getting close to that technical target. So we don't need to be on the money with the technical targets, especially with altcoins, but this is pretty much where you get to when shit gets really bad. Let's look at the daily and see about where the RSI is pivoted. Yeah, so we're just entering oversold territory right now on the RSI. And then as for the weekly, this could be some of the lowest. Oh no, actually, we have enough chart history here for this to be like, yeah, that's a signal. Like, I'm starting to like get a little bit more worried about above 85 on the weekly RSI when we have multiple years of data. Like, this thing was back in 2018, right? So above 80 RSI is really like a GTFO kind of warning. Obviously, in a real crazy alt season, you get to 95, and that was a comment that I said before. I forgot what project I was looking at, but I said, yeah, like 95 is what you see on weekly RSI for an altcoin at the end, at the real, like, look at this shit, dude. Oh my god. Fucking 40,000%. Like, it'd be amazing if we had another repeat of that. It'd be life changing. But you know, the reason this wasn't life changing is because no one knew how to play this cycle. And it's like, are we learning? You know, that's the thing that's tough to determine is, are they going to make these cycles a little bit more technical for us, or are they going to make them a little bit less return on investment than they used to be? So it's just, we get these major moves followed by 60 to 70% corrections over and over and over again. And then obviously the category losers just drop and keep sinking deeper. Like, I think in the last red pill, we looked at a project that was like breaking lower than the bear market lows. That's fucking crazy. But hey, speculative altcoins, this is a gambling casino. That's what happens. So yeah, this project is down 23% on the week. It's definitely hurting. Coming back to a technical level of the 382, we would hope this holds, and this is kind of the time frame where you get a little bit of a pivot. How did this go in the wow? Let's see how it went in the C19 crash. Just like a perfect reset for liquidity at that little like pin drop V. That's crazy, right? And then look, I know it doesn't look like a lot, but this shit went up fucking 500% in 89 days. Like, you wouldn't see, when you zoom out, you don't think it did that. But like, I bet you all right now, if I was like, oh, this project can go up 500% in the next 89 days, you'd be like, sign me up, fam. We would all want that, right? But the funny thing is, if that did happen, I bet a lot of people still wouldn't take action because they would think, oh, we're just going to keep going and going and going forever. So it's tough. So much of this is psychological, and so much of this is like having a plan and the willingness and the like to keep the ego trained enough and in control to not go against your plan, which I'm not perfect at. I mean, for the most part, I think I made a huge mistake recently with doing exactly that, and I've learned, and I've admitted it publicly here in multiple Patreon video and also update posts for the past 2 weeks, you know, so I'm not perfect. I'm learning. Let's get to Tao. Not really a whole lot to say on this XYO play, right? Because it's really just all about that 382 and the pivot. And then consider that this 702 or slash golden pocket territory is a little bit dangerous on the upside. And that's kind of the return, the quick speed of the return that you would get off of a move like this. So just keep a little bit of that in mind. Not the worst project, by the way. But also, nobody's like shilling me to get it like with Sui. It's like every fucking day. It's like Sui cult. It's powerful, man. The powerful force of the altcoin cults. Very interesting chart. I mean, I do like this parallel channel and the fact that we've come back to the 236 fib and we have this heart line right around that fib. Let me turn it this way just for the moment because it gives me a different perspective, and it's showing that the 382 is kind of what we're flirting with right now. This isn't about being perfect, by the way. It's just about as many touch points as possible along this parallel channel, which we tend to re-enter and spend some time in. Now, this was a weird backup phase. Like, the way this all happened, it almost looks like the bull run is over for this, because you see the way it launched straight line into March 2024. That's the way that the last coin looked. Like, look at the XYO chart. Look, guys, just straight line, chop, one more run, bear market. Straight line, chop, one run up. This is exactly how the 2021 alt season went, which ended like last year for this project. But obviously we did come up and double top, so that's very strange the way this went. And now it's down, 60%. So it'd be fascinating if this still has more juice to go. But this whole run up that it did was literally identical to what every altcoin did. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. It's like what every altcoin did back in 2021. This project did it in the midst of the beginning of our bull run. Wow. I don't know if I noticed that the last time that I did this red pill on it. Let me know if I did. I don't remember the last time I did bit tensor, or have I ever done? Yeah, I mean, I must have done it obviously because we have some indicators on, but yeah, I'm going to wrap up this podcast here. Just say that like we've returned back to a major support zone. The fact that we did have this style of breakout followed by the way that we came back up into this double top, it's not the sexiest chart. It's like a little worrisome, the fact that we did this. And then so there's a clear sell wall, and then the fact that we've been returning back continuously to this major area, which I would have called a backup phase, is also a little worrisome, because this could turn into a spring. So if it were to go deeper, it doesn't mean the end of the bull run for it, but it does say to me that we have to watch out for this zone, because like that would be your best case worst scenario right there. The reason I say worse is because you'd have a deeper move to fill out this wick right here. But then you have thin air all the way to here, 88. You see? Thin air till we get back to there. So yeah, it could just turn into a big McDonald's, you know, big Mickey D's. I'm loving it. Donald Trump loves it. It's his favorite restaurant. Imagine you're a billionaire who has a private jet and you still eat McDonald's. I'll leave it there. That's where the Red Pill podcast ends. It ends with this TA. But no, I'm being for real, guys. This zone right here, definitely pay attention. And I think if it drops to the 236, if you're somebody who still has some positive feelings on the future of this particular project, and you feel like it's worth nibbling a little bit, just be cautious. Buying at this stage of the bull run is very, very tough to call where it could flip. And, you know, we've seen some pretty wild things happen during backup phases as well, which is why I talked about Ethereum the way that I did before, because of the way that Ethereum is forming at this particular phase right now, where it's dropping down to retest the 0.5 fib for the third major time in this whole sequence. And I wonder, is that just a repeat of this back test we got here at the 0.5, which was just filling this area out on a rejection zone that we had, which led to a very devastating fractal. So we have right here the 0.5 test, pretty much kissed the 0.5 over here, and now we're just back testing it with two major signals. Clearly breaking below, got some thin air. So this is a very, 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 very precarious week. You know, we really have to see how this pushes through. Obviously, I've given you all I could possibly give you in regards to March 9th through the 16th. Keep all of that in mind. I believe CPI is tomorrow, so we'll see what goes on over there. Got a little bit of a bounce in the stock market into the weekly close, but obviously a very volatile weekly open ahead. And then I do think we'll have a little bit of a CME gap for Bitcoin to the upside, so perhaps that could pull us up a little bit. But yeah, we just have to see how this week goes, and appreciate and am grateful for every single one of you. And you could count on getting a midweek update. Of course, if we get some volatility in either direction, I will make sure to update you as soon as possible, just like I did with the Trump update that happened. I pretty much immediately came out and gave you guys a text update when I got the news. So stand by. I hope you all enjoyed and got a lot of value out of today's Red Pill, the Eclipse season special. I'll be catching you all very soon. Much love.